They're earning often more than their parents did. And these people are spending money. Unlike many other older employees who will necessarily save, this crowd goes out and spends everything it can. So the restaurants are booming in pretty much every city we go to. At some subtle way, it changes the face of that city.
For every BPO job, at least another 2 jobs are created in supporting industries such as retail, construction and real estate. Many of these new, modern apartment blocks will soon be filled by the well-paid men and women who work for companies like Jekas. But behind the facade, India's poor infrastructure is struggling to keep pace with the demands of high-tech industry. In cities like Gurgaon, there's a chronic shortage of water and almost no public transport. And daily, there are prolonged power cuts.
You go to the telecom people and they say, well, we'll guarantee you 95% uptime. And you look at them and say, 95% uptime? I need 99.95% uptime. And they look at you and say, why?
But in spite of its shortcomings, India still has one overwhelming advantage: a colossal pool of cheap labour. With an average wage of only $900 a year, how can countries like Australia ever hope to compete?
I'm on 10 already. As I said to you guys before, it's as easy as anything. I'm just going to say it one last time. Basically, these customers can get convinced easily, okay? Whether they're South Australia or Melbourne, it is as easy as this. Every call is a deal. If none moves on, you just keep moving on to the next and next. It's called a numbers game as well.
Australia's call centre industry employs over 140,000 workers. Good. But every day there is mounting pressure to go offshore.
I know you, Simon. How you going? Hey, Bobby. How are you?
Finance sector union organiser Kath Noy is desperately trying to hold on to jobs.
Our union has been involved in looking at overseas and what's happening there, because that also has enormous impact on our conditions here and our ability to hold jobs here. We suspect probably 40 to 50,000 jobs will go offshore in the next few years. We've looked at the trends overseas, we've looked at the UK, the USA, what's happening worldwide, and looking at those trends and looking at what's already started to happen in this country, we're pretty confident that those are the sorts of figures we'll be looking at.
Yes, those lower skilled jobs that can be done elsewhere in a developing country, they'll go. Just as they have in the textile manufacturing over the last 20 years, will go. We no longer look at where the clothes come from at all. We just don't care.
On the stretch of
A worker from one country is being auctioned off, if you like, against another worker from another country. The only people benefiting from this are a very, very small portion of shareholders in these very big corporations.
The Australian companies have to consider it because they are tasked with the job of increasing profitability, and one element of that is growing your revenue and the other element is controlling your costs and getting focused and so forth. And yes, when you've got 80% of the Fortune 100 doing some kind of offshoring, then you've got to wake up to what does this mean.
As jobs continue to flow out of Australia, the BPO industry is exporting more than just employment to India. It's exporting Western culture, and that's leaving an indelible imprint on Indian society. Until recently, Indian women were not allowed to work at night. Then, the BPO industry lobbied the government to change the law.
50% of our employees are women. Their parents are not going to let them out of the house unless they know that they're being very well looked after. So it was our job to make sure that their parents understood, we'd have guards, we'd have the right transportation, we'd make sure they were dropped home, we'd make sure they were picked up.
The opportunity to work at night has transformed the lives of women like Santosh Kohli. She comes from a traditional family where it's unheard of for women to have professional careers, let alone work late hours.
ये मेरे पापा हैं, इनका नाम गोपाल सिंह है। जरा जोर। और ये मेरी मम्मी है।
Like most girls born into Indian families of modest means, Santosh was seen as a liability.
इसका पैदा होने में इनको बहुत दुख हुआ था।
हाँ, जब
जैसे गोली लगी कार में।
मेरे पापा बहुत रोए थे, सर पटक के रोए थे कि ये बेटी हुई है इसलिए।
Santosh's father saw no value in educating her.
और हमेशा इन्हें फर्स्ट प्रायोरिटी देना,
इनको छोड़ के आना,
इनको छोड़ के आना, इनको लेके आना। तो मैं कहती थी मुझे छोड़ के आओ, तो नहीं छोड़ के आते थे।
हम ये सोचते अब नहीं करना पड़ा है, अब जब शादी ब्याह कर दिया।
हमेशा यही कहते थे।
मैं बस पास करके कोई पढ़ाई करने की कोई जरूरत नहीं।
तो बात करें, मेरे दिल में तो ये थी कि अच्छा पढ़े, लेकिन मैं जो ये इसके लिए इतना आगे मैं कर तो नहीं पाती, मेरे पास तो कुछ था नहीं जो मैं इसके लिए कर पाती।
Despite her father's opposition, Santosh was determined to continue her education.
मैंने बताया मैं ले लिया एडमिशन, अब तुम कुछ नहीं करो, मैं अपना आप ले लिया, मैं सब कुछ अपने उससे करूँगी। मतलब ऐसे बोला। ये थोड़े दिन ऐसे रहा, मम्मी पापा आपस में लड़ाई झगड़े हो जाते थे कभी कभी कि इस बारे में कि कौन करेगा कैसे।
To pay for her college fees, Santosh cooked for 3 families every day. In 2004, she was offered a job at Jekas, which meant working through the night. Her parents were worried.
तो मुझे विश्वास नहीं था। 2-3 दिन तो मैंने इससे बोला कि रात को जाना आना कोई जरूरत नहीं है, कहाँ है कंपनी, क्या है कंपनी, क्या है हम नहीं जानते, है ना। घर में काम भी करना है और पढ़ाई कर, इससे तो आगे और पढ़ाई कर। ये मुझे पता नहीं था कि ये ट्रेनिंग दे रहे हैं आगे कुछ बनने के लिए, ये मुझे नहीं था।
फिर उसके बाद जब उन्होंने बोला हमको वहाँ चलो, वहाँ एक दिन तुम चलो हम शाम को हमको यहाँ 7 बजे ले गया, रात को 11 बजे हम यहाँ छोड़ गए। तब देखा हमने वहाँ का माहौल, सब भाई जैसे अपने भाई बहन रहते हैं, मिलजुल के उस ढंग से रहते हैं वहाँ। अगर जरा भी किसी ने गलत कर दिया तो वहाँ कंप्यूटर में पूरा पता चल जाता, तो फिर हमको दिल में तसले हो गए।
अब वो उनको बयान नहीं करते, मुझे करते हैं ज़्यादा। ये नहीं कि मैं जॉब करने लगी, बस ये कि हाँ उन्हें लगता है कि मेरे अंदर कुछ है, कॉन्फिडेंस आ गया है और कुछ सोचती है या कुछ करना चाहती है, इसलिए।
Santosh's family, who once considered her a burden, now depends on her income.
ज़्यादा मेरा फोकस है अपनी सिस्टर और ब्रदर की तरफ, उनकी लाइफ बनाऊं।
क्या कितना है?
उसी जो मेरी पोस्ट हो कि हाँ भाई कि संतोष कोहली कुछ है।
Ekta Jaiswal is also breaking with the past. But unlike Santosh, she's a wealthy single girl living away from her family.
Hello? Do you mind? Where have you been? Jogging at this point of time. You will not lose weight in the evening. You should jog in the morning.
Ekta now shares a 2-bedroom house with her friend Bash Dutta.
That's Ritesh.
Hi.
And this is Bash. Hey. We stay together. Paji is my brother. He's my colleague from office. In fact, actually, I'm his manager. So he's my team member, but he's more like a brother. And he's my support system.
Ekta and her friends are part of a new financially independent generation with a lifestyle that's familiar to their peers in the West. It's a lifestyle that defies one of the key tenets of traditional Indian culture, the subordinate role of women.
You know, with the kind of society that we actually live in, you know, the 2 girls living alone, moving in and out of the house at no time, right? They're coming back home at 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, or because their shifts always keep rotating and everything. So people might just have a different kind of a notion, which is definitely not the case.
There was this article in the paper wherein people asked, okay, call center industry, so they kind of associated with like call girl, okay, wherein the myth had to be broken, saying that, okay, it's not that profession that you're talking about, it's something which is completely different. And their concept, why? Because you work nights, you come back at weird hours, a cab comes to drop you,